Hi, everybody. Welcome back.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching our
So,
clips. And we're joined now by three of the four filmmakers. Steve's out there somewhere, and I think he's going to join us at some point. But you've just seen clips from the four films that we've been working on for about a year. Um, I wanted to let you know that we are now joined by Ty Rushing. Ty, raise your hand for me.
Hey.
There's Steve. And by Terrence Thames and Venice Berry and Steve Berry. And as a place to jump off, what I want to do is I want to just give a little bit of background for everybody so you know a bit about the filmmakers. So Steve, we're going to get back to you in a second because I want to make sure that there are a couple of questions I have for you specifically tonight. But Terrence, you see over there with Coco Creative at the bottom. He is the CEO of the advanced media production firm and the Coco Creative Agency. Now, Terrence grew up on the south side of Chicago, but at the age of 9, he moved to Iowa City and was raised by his college-age cousin, which I'm going to ask a little bit about that coming up here. He came to Iowa City because there were some opportunities that he would have if he came here instead of staying in Chicago. He's currently focused on family, faith, and wealth building among minorities and their communities. Welcome in, Terrence. Venice Berry, who's says Venice Berry at the bottom of her screen. She's a professor of journalism and African American studies, and she's the DEO for that department at the University of Iowa. She received her BA in journalism and an MA in communication studies from the University of Iowa. Her PhD is in radio, TV, and film from the University of Texas at Austin. She is the author of 3 nationally best-selling novels. And welcome in, Venice. Now, her brother, Steve Berry, who goes professionally as S. Torriano Berry, is a native of Kansas City, Kansas, but was raised in Des Moines. He received a bachelor's degree from Arizona State University, and then after graduation, he went to the master's program at UCLA's prestigious film school. While at UCLA, he worked on numerous film and video projects. He retired in 2016 as an associate professor from Howard University in Washington, D.C. He is currently professor emeritus from that institution, and he is co-author of 2 books on Black film. Welcome in, Steve. And yeah, it was funny. We had this discussion, you and I, because it was like, do I call you S. Torriano Berry or do I call you Steve? And you're like, Steve's fine. Go ahead. But you'll see in the film and the credits, you'll see it as S. Torriano Berry. And also you saw when it came up when he was talking on camera. Finally, it's Ty Rushing. Ty grew up in Kansas City, and about a decade ago, he came to Iowa. He's currently senior editor at the Iowa Starting Line, and he's been a staff writer, a business reporter, and managing editor at several newspaper publications across the state. Welcome in, Ty. Welcome to all of you guys. As a place to begin for questions, when I approached all of you, we all basically understood that these 4 films weren't going to solve problems, but they were going to open the door to a greater discussion. And that's kind of how we approached everything. I want to start with you, Terrence, because the 2 opening films, the Racism and Its Impact and Poverty and the Wealth Gap, those were your 2 films. And when I came to you, what did you think when I said, pitch me something on these topics?
Yeah, I think I had a whole long list of stuff, if I remember correctly. But there's a lot of space there to tell a lot of stories, and it's a lot of different unique perspectives. And so, we're all Iowans, and some people may see some of these stories as their story only, but it's really the story of Iowa communities that maybe don't get told as much. But I had a lot of ideas. I'm not short of ideas. So, but I was also very honored to be asked and to be seen as a thought leader in the space.
Now, Venice, I called you on the phone and I remember asking you about this, but what were you thinking when I'm saying to you, and I'd like you to do 26 minutes on Black history for the past 175 years. Go.
Well, I was trying to figure out what I could include and how much I was going to have to leave out. That was one of the big issues, but just wanted to kind of come up with a certain structure of what were some of the most important elements that needed to be discussed. And of course, I, went straight to my brother, who is the filmmaker, and said, okay, you got to work with me on this. And he, of course, like he normally does, he does what I say usually. And, and he's good at what he does. So I was happy about that.
I would agree with that. So Steve, your sister comes to you and she says, okay, so this guy from Iowa PBS says, we're going to do this film on Black history. What were your thoughts?
So when do we start?
Outstanding.
I think one of the main things that I am, I guess, the proudest of, which I guess just happened by chance, was the fact that I was able to include some footage that I shot of for the African American Museum of Iowa. They have their history makers, and back in 2007, I shot interviews with Willie Stevenson Glanton, the first female Black legislator, and also Mayor Wynn of Clinton. So I had that footage, and so just the fact that I was able to pull that off the shelf. I talked to Betty Anderson, who I actually worked with to shoot that. She said, okay, we checked with the museum and they said it's okay. And so to actually have those two powerful, history makers from Iowa in our piece, I think is one of the things I'm the most proud of.
And then that's something that people that are watching this right now, having seen that opening clip, this is your reason to go to iowapbs.org or open up the PBS video app and look for these films. They'll be available starting Monday. And these, I'm going to say this more than once, the first two films, Racism and Its Impact and Poverty and the Wealth Gap, those air Monday night. And then Tuesday night is Black History. And then the final piece, Ending Racism. And Ty, when I got a hold of you, it's like, we're both reporters, we're journalists, but I'm asking you, it's like, okay, here's a big one. How do we end racism? So what was your thought when I asked you about doing that?
Oh, cool. Yeah, this is a very easy one. Like, yeah, that's no problem. We'll just we'll Band-Aid off and it'll be gone. Toss it in the trash. But so I was excited to kind of take on that project. And like I told you before, like what I envisioned was a road trip. I wanted to talk to people, like Black people all across Iowa, who were just putting in work, doing things in their communities to, make racism less of a burden in their personal lives. And I wanted to get all of their answers and just throw them out there and see what everybody says and see what everybody's doing, and to see if there's like a similar answer, if there's different answers, or they're contrasting views and things like that. And, just like, I just kind of wanted to take it all together and throw it in one pot and see what we got. And yeah, I think the final product turned out well. I mean, we didn't quite get the answer, or maybe we did. You got to watch and find out.
One of the things with that particular piece, you went across the entire state. So you were in Sioux City, you were in Dubuque, you were in Des Moines. This wasn't just something where you're like, okay, I'm close to X, I'm just going to walk around and do that.
Absolutely. Like, I wanted to tell an Iowa story, and Black Iowa stories are or Iowa stories, period. And I wanted to tell a story from across the state. So, I was living in Sioux City at the time when we were filming. And so, you got footage shot in Sioux City, you got footage from Spencer, Iowa, you got footage from Sheldon, Iowa, you got, we did interviews in Dubuque, Waterloo, Des Moines. Like, I went all across the state. I mean, we pulled footage from other places as well, because I wanted this to be an Iowa story, and like every community is approaching these issues differently. And so I thought it was very, I thought it was important to have everyone like share their experiences and what they're doing and what's working and what's not working where they are. And then just like, get all of those answers.
One of the things that I noticed in this was you had the juxtaposition of defund the police and, well, that doesn't always work. So you saw two different viewpoints of just that one issue. That obviously is not the only one. You'll be able to see that at 8:30 on Tuesday night, the 7th. And also all four of these films will be available at 12:01 a.m. That's what our web person is doing. She's putting all of these out there so you can watch them right away. Terrence, I want to talk with you about the same thing, this process, and how you decided, first of all, in film one, just talking about racism and its impact, I found it interesting that you chose Jeannie Dykes as your first person that everybody sees, because within this, by having Black filmmakers, I think that there will be some that at first blush would say, wait, why do you have a white person on to talk about Black issues? So tell me a little bit about the motivation for that choice.
Yeah. Great question. Dr. D is incredibly credible. I saw her speak for an event that my agency was covering, where she dealt with essentially how to talk about critical race theory in our education systems, right? And she was educating a gym packed full of white people who, and also helping them to also understand the sensitivities to Black students in a school district. And I was just, I thought it was incredible. And even in that, and me recognizing her as a source and coming to her and asking, she was still conscious enough to say, you know what, I want to elevate those who are doing the same work in my space, who are also not white. And so how about you interview them, right? Because I recognize I'm just one person, but I want to be part of the solution. But it just kind of worked out that she also was still able to interview as well, and we included her in. So incredibly credible. And I think also sometimes having someone that doesn't look like me to talk about these kind of conversations can kind of be a bit disarming, because it can help us open up our ears and let go of our initial defenses to say, oh, you know, they, you know, especially for someone who is white and listening to these stories about what we're talking about, they see someone who looks like them innately can maybe be, okay, well, let me listen, as opposed to being defensive. They see me coming, talking about the same thing. But she's incredibly credible, and I thought she would add a lot of value to the story, and she did. It was everyone needs to listen to what she has to say and her research and so forth as well.
Tell me about Joy and how you found her, you know, what that connection is and how that worked its way into the film.
Yeah.
Or she worked away. Go ahead.
Yeah. Joy Briscoe is incredible. She is one of the leaders for an amazing organization, 24/7 Black, based in the Waterloo area. And they are doing a lot of work around really economic justice, I would call it, when it comes to helping minorities to have more equity, access to capital, more incubation of their businesses, and more representation, not only in technical assistance and training, but also how they help businesses to scale. And she is a brilliant human being, a wonderful woman. And we had kind of crossed paths before, but I really got to know more about her work, and I thought she'd be an incredible contributor to this project.
She seemed pretty excited to be there, just in looking at some of the raw video before it got edited down that Fred sent us so that we could have a look. I also wanted to ask about film too. When you look at the number of Black entrepreneurs, that's a small number. When you look at the number of Black female entrepreneurs, that's an even smaller number. So how did you go about your selection process for film 2, which you'll be able to see Monday night at 8:30?
That's right. Monday night's going to be a Coco night.
It is
2 films, Coco night. Yeah. But, you know, I think in our state, you know, entrepreneurship is one way to kind of help grow this, kind of close the gap with wealth and poverty. But, you know, there were different individuals who were entrepreneurs, non-entrepreneurs, from different walks of life, who all contributed. And whether we had people who were advocates, from Andre Wright, who's an incredible brother, to K. Abdul Samad, Representative Abdul Samad, to Mayor Hart, to Justin Lewis, who is has a great nonprofit, you know, ran for city council. This different ages, different experiences, but I think our journeys help provide a common denominator in terms of how that we understand wealth, what our prior history is with it. And then you bring in, of course, Deshara and Angela, who are incredible women, who are just some great people to be in the ecosystem, but also very credible in their spaces. The common denominator is maybe what we didn't have, was stories we weren't told, and how they're finding a way to grow wealth and make a difference for not only those around them, but also for the kids. So they have more things left for them when we're all gone off the face of the earth. So that common denominator of wanting to grow, sure, and having more than what we started off with, I think brought everybody together. And those different experiences are kind of how I met some of them. And their stories are incredible as well.
Venice, I want to talk a little bit about the selection that you had. I know that I saw your first treatment of this, and I was doing a holy smokes, how are you going to get that into 2646? And clearly you could not. There were some hurdles for you guys of trying to, how did you decide, what do I keep in? What do I take out? How did you go through that? How did you guys do that? Venice, I want you to start because there's something I want to ask Steve specifically, but go ahead.
Well, one of the things that we always do is he'll put together something and then I'll go in and say, okay, change this, move that, and we need more of this, or we need less of that. And so that's where I started. I didn't want to eliminate anything. So I started trying to figure out, okay, who can I, different places where we could just cut, but we could keep, the majority or the most important stuff in. Then when we got to the point where, we had to actually eliminate something, like one of the things that I feel like we're missing that we really could do a whole piece on is, Black celebrities, entertainers, this
sure,
whole thing about Iowa, artists, musicians. I mean, that's an area that we didn't end up covering. We ended up taking it out. But that could be a piece on its own because there's a lot of exciting things going on concerning African Americans and in the entertainment industry. But yeah, so we just basically cut down and cut down and cut down. And then also, I had told you earlier at the last minute, we got connected with Ross Wilburn. And I think that his piece ended up being really prominent and really interesting. So I was really excited about getting him on board. And so we had to kind of pull out some other stuff to get him in. So we kind of went back and forth. But I mean, if we'd had an hour or if we'd had 50 minutes, we'd have had even more good stuff. So hopefully the next one.
The next one. We'll discuss. Steve, I want to talk to you specifically about something that was in the film. And we saw that in the clip, if you guys all were able to see the clips that happened. But you had a moment of discovery going through this where you were like, wait a minute, I didn't think that there were any exclusionary or Black codes or anything like that. And all of a sudden you fell on that. You came across it. First, I want to know, what was your initial reaction? Was it like a jaw-dropping moment, or did you kind of like, oh yeah, I remember being told about that when I was younger, and this is just a reminder?
No, I had never heard anything about the Exclusionary Act of 1853. Growing up in Iowa, and even, being grown, the years, as I was grown, I had always been proud that I was raised in Iowa. Again, a free state, a place that said, no, we don't want slavery. We will not have slavery on our soil. And that was always a source of pride to me. And then, in preparing for this documentary, I ran across the Exclusionary Act of 1853 that said, no, free Negroes or mulattoes shall be allowed to settle in the state. I was hurt. I was crushed. In fact, I had a section that you took out, that I actually expressed this. I mean, the hurt, that I felt and the disappointment, Yeah. And of course, because I can understand, the whole thing that, I guess it wasn't, everybody didn't want, Blacks in the state, but I can understand that. But anyway, I was crushed. I truly was. I was very, very disappointed that I always said, we don't even want Black people in the state, at one point.
There is everybody has to watch Tuesday night at 8 to see how that turns out. Clearly they got rid of it, but the timing of when and why they got rid of it. I did find Reverend Dial really interesting. Where did you guys find him Or did you know him from the past somewhere, your past?
He goes way back. Tori, take it.
Yeah, Reverend Dial was the Reverend of Bethel AME in Iowa City for
Okay.
17 years. So he was my pastor for a long time.
Okay.
And probably about 4 years, maybe 5, he was moved to the Burlington area.
Okay.
But yeah, I've known Reverend Dow for many years, and I don't know why he wasn't on my radar in the beginning, but it was later on when we start thinking about we wanted to look at religion in more depth that we kind of connected with Reverend Dow.
And he, as you will notice in the piece, he jumped around to all kinds of different, areas.
Yeah, he's very knowledgeable.
Right. Initially, it was just about, the religion and the Black church. And he had knowledge and information on a lot of different areas that we were able to utilize.
Well, his discussions, even within the Black church, just watching that small section, which everyone must tune in to watch, it was interesting to hear him talk about this history and evolution from the 1860s through into the 1960s, and how the church served as a place to gather for both discussion and for protests and for speaking your mind. Ty, what kind of hurdles? Because, okay, I got to back up a little bit because I know a little bit more background here. You had people lined up and then you were like, oh no, I can't get to them. And you got other people that you were like, these guys are even better. What happened with that? How did you do that? And tell everybody who it was that you interviewed finally after all of that.
Yeah, I mean, so like when I pitched the story, like I had an initial list of people that I wanted to talk to. So like I had folks in the Iowa City, Cedar Rapids area, and none of them came through. And I had the original person I wanted to talk to in Dubuque, didn't come through. And so we had all the interviews done. And deadline was coming up. We had 30 days left until the first draft was due. Mm-hmm. And I was telling Dave, I'm like, man, like it's missing Dubuque. Like we need Dubuque in there. And the person I wanted to get for Dubuque, like I couldn't get to the person directly. The person had a very protective assistant who would not let me speak to the person directly. And anytime I called the number, no one would ever pick up. I would just have to leave a voicemail, and I would call and call and call. And I'm usually very good about finding people's cell phones online. I couldn't find this person's cell phone. I'm just like, I was getting desperate. I tried to find, I found their like old school AOL email address. I shot a note to that one, and that actually worked. I couldn't find a cell phone, but the AOL email address worked. And so, all right, we're getting closer to setting it up. And the person was saying, oh, I can only do it on this day or that day. And the days he was available, we wouldn't be able to get any footage, like any good B-roll. It'd just be, an office interview with like without showcasing his work. So
right.
The point. And so I was like almost ready to go for it just because I was so desperate to get Dubuque in this story, because if you know the history of Dubuque, you will know that it's very important to have that city in a film about racism. And then the subject got COVID. He got COVID. So it was just like, okay, all right, nothing is working out here. So I just started like looking through all kind of news stories related to Dubuque, especially when it comes to race and racism, to see, okay, who are some other active prominent voices in there? Another person I saw had literally moved from Dubuque a month before I found his name. And then I stumbled across Lynn Sutton, and I was like, I don't know why it took me so long on my search to find her. She's a second generation civil rights activist in Dubuque. She was the first Black woman on the city council in Dubuque. She's done all this stuff, and she's a current advocate for obviously racial equality and housing equality and things like that. And I'm like, I don't know why it took me so long to find her, but like, I'm so glad I did, because like her story is so compelling, and the things she is doing there in Dubuque are so impressive. And like, I can't wait for you guys to see her in the film. She is just an incredible woman, and her mom was incredible as well. I wanted to talk more about her, but like, we only had 26 minutes, so I couldn't like really get into the Sutton family history, but they were one of the first 5 Black families in Dubuque, and they put up with a lot.
I was looking at, I get messages from time to time from those that are supporting us, so I look over there. And Lynn Sutton is a pretty powerful character, but you had several. When you came to Des Moines, you had a couple of characters with what became the BLM, became Black Liberation Movement. Was that a hard group to get to talk to? Did they want to talk to you? Did they not want to talk to you?
Not for me. Like, I know they've had a lot of issues with, because, they got some pretty shady treatment in other places, but The group was very willing to work with me and talk to me because, I have a pretty good reputation in the state as a journalist. I'm one of the few working Black journalists in the state, like especially on the print/written side. I think there's like less than 5 of us on that side. Like there's a lot more representation of people that look like me in TV, but when it comes to writing out stories, that are going to be, printed and paper, not that much. So, I was aware of what they were doing down there in 2020. They were aware of what I was doing in Northwest Iowa. So like, and then just, so it's like mutual admiration from a distance. And like with Jalen, like he and I have, a lot of similar stories. Both came from the Kansas City area, both moved to Iowa. I mean, even though he had like previous Iowa ties, whereas I did not. So, and then Jaleisha was just like very open to it. I mean, Jaleisha Johnson, she's the first person you meet in the story. And I think people are going to fall in love with her. She's just like a very whimsical, charming, intelligent young lady who is just doing incredible work in her community. And she's been doing it since she was a teenager, which we cover in the film. And then Jalen, man, Jalen does not bite his tongue. He's actually currently running for State House in Iowa. He does not bite his tongue. Like he says, he talks about it in the film. Like it gets him in trouble sometimes, but he doesn't relent. Like his conviction is so strong. And like, I admire him for that because like he said some things. I'm like, whoa, dang, okay, all right, more power to you. And so like, and again, even in the film, he doesn't bite his tongue. And what's incredible is there's a part of the film, we spent all day with him and he talks about some of the harassment he's received from law enforcement. And then during the filming of, like while we were filming him, some of it started happening live. Like he started getting followed around by a state trooper, like while we were filming him. And so it was just like, he just tells about all these things happening to him. And then like, we actually witness it. So, he's not embellishing things. Like this is just his reality. And yet he's still out there. He's still speaking his mind. And so, it's going to be interesting just to keep watching him over the years to see, what happens next with him.
Terrence, I want to ask you a little bit about things that you discovered when you were getting ready, specifically really with film 1, racism and its impact. There was if you watch the entire film, which you will have an opportunity to do that Monday night or online. You like how I did that? There's a spot in every so often where we refer back to this state data center sheet that shows the overall population and then the sliver that is Black Iowans and how that all fits in. I found that somewhat striking as to seeing how all the numbers work. But was that the one thing that you saw in the creation of that film that was new to you, or were there other things that you discovered when you were doing film 1?
Yeah. Well, first, before I forget, I just want to just say how much of a blessing it is to even be alongside all these great filmmakers. Ty, I'm a big fan. It's a good brother. Dr. Berry, she knows how I feel about her. Professor Berry, the other Dr. Berry. This is wonderful. So I just want to acknowledge that, how great this is.
Just one doctor.
Oh, one doctor, one professor emeritus. There we go. But it's such a blessing to tell these stories and have the agency to do so. So thank you to PBS. Thank you. This is wonderful. I know this won't be the last time that we continue to do work like this. I just got to say that. And also I want to thank my co-producers, Mark Smith and Freddie Bong, who are incredible in helping us produce all this great work. And so I would say one of the most surprising things, for one, I love how, and this came through the group Iowa Core, that we were able to help get the data from the state data center. And again, this is an educational platform. We all have, this is all objective information. So people need to know what the data says, right? They need to know what the information says. It's not just rhetoric about how we feel. We're talking about, there are facts here about what the current condition is in terms of the state of Black America in our state. But there were some staggering, some incredibly crazy statistics. But I think one of the most impactful things for me is really learning some of the history in film 1 of how racism has existed and everyday things that most people may not know. They may not know what arenas have backgrounds that have where decisions were made through racism. They may not know about, more importantly, how redlining still exists in some of our Iowa communities. I think that was probably what some of the most staggering stuff that I seen, because I can actually look at it in real time. We had a great interview with the at the African American Museum of Iowa, and they had coincidentally had a current project going on about redlining. I knew some of the history, but you just don't know that some of these things are in front of our faces right now, and how it's perpetuated through legislation. And we just think these things are okay. We just accept it. That's that side of town, or this is this side of town, and people just live here because it's just kind of like that. No, that there's in our Iowa communities, in our lovely state of Iowa, where the Field of Dreams resides, there's still all this mess going on. And we have to have legislative incentive and collective community power to change it. Those things, along with the stats, were kind of really surprising to me.
What about film number 2?
Mhm.
You know, you spoke with 6 entrepreneurs. Was there something out of all of that? There was a singular spark, something that they all possessed that you could go, yeah, all of you do different work, but at its core, you are all X.
Yeah. You know what? It's interesting because they're all in way different areas of life: state legislator, local government, entrepreneur, senior VP of a global company, right? And again, I think I mentioned earlier that the humanness of them all, I just am so appreciative of all those lovely souls, because they spoke their truth from the heart. But people was broke. Maybe not currently, but we all start off in a place that's very humble. But you have to have a right mindset in order to elevate those around you. And that their mindsets kind of came through as to what it is of how we can succeed in spite of, right? No matter what the circumstance is. If you were born to poverty, if your father, worked at John Deere, and mother did some things and they saved up for college, right? It's your mindset and how you see the opportunities is the biggest impact for how you can change your life. Even with Justin, he has some great things to say about the history, and we talk about that. He alludes to the GI Bill, and it goes back to some of the haves and have-nots and those kind of things as well. But your mindset and what you do with your opportunity can make a world of difference. And I think that was powerful. And seeing different situations, 6 different people talk about that in different ways was amazing. Andre Wright's testimony was absolutely incredible. And there was a lot of stuff. Maybe we get a director's cut, where we include some of his backstory. May your heart, it's absolutely incredible. But the humanness was the common denominator again. But people start off from very humble beginnings, but the mindset is what can help elevate you through those situations.
Venice, I want to ask about, you've gone through this. You're already a history professor. This is an important part of your life. But what were you trying to say anything with your film? Was there something underlying that you thought of as you're writing this and you're working with all of the material? Is there something in your head that you're saying, I want this to happen? I want to start this conversation, or people to have this conversation?
Well, as Steve had talked about, I am proud of the fact that, Iowa, they were admitting African Americans into schools. As an academic, they were admitting African Americans into their schools 86 years before Brown versus the Board of Education. Alexander Clark sued in the 1800s so that his daughter could, he's African American. He got a law degree from the University of Iowa, and he wanted his daughter to go to the local school, which was a white school, and he sued and he won. And I don't think people really understand that. A lot of Black students early on got degrees from Iowa. Now, they couldn't live in the dorms, but there were different houses, different people, African Americans owned houses in Iowa City, and they would put up the students while they were in law school or working on a grad degree, and maybe even some undergrads. So I think that to me is one of the most interesting elements of Iowa, is that education has always been a very prominent part of our state, and African Americans, were, I mean, not everybody probably, but a lot of African Americans were able to take that step to improve their lives and their families' lives and the community. And I think that for me, that was one of the most interesting areas. Of course, that's tied to Buxton too, in the sense of, one of the first places where Blacks and whites worked together in the coal mines, and Black teachers taught white kids and vice versa. And, they lived next to each other. I mean, those are things that I think make Iowa important and special in our society. And I think there are things a lot of people don't know about.
And there's a lot. That was when I was looking at some of those things, it was like Black codes was something, those were something that I had not heard of. A lot of the information that you went through, I was like, okay, heard about that. Haven't heard about that one. So looking at what you did, I liked how you opened the door to a lot of discussion and to a lot of getting people to be a little bit more interested and to go investigate a little bit more about what was there.
Absolutely.
Steve, did you have something? I mean, obviously the two, your big sister will tell you exactly how that's going to go. But was there something that you were hoping that on the other end, when people watch this film, which they will have the opportunity Tuesday night at 8:00, was there something that you were hoping people would take away from your film?
Basically, I'm just hoping that, it's just race and racism in general. And it would be wonderful if people could just realize, I think that the main thing is, when it comes to racism, all you need to do is ask yourself, what if it was happening to you? How would you feel? Would you accept it? Would you live with it? Would you bend over and take it, or not? And I think that, a lot of the information, that we have in our pieces, and from I noticed in the other clips, the other pieces we'll have will bring about, just how much more power and progressiveness Iowa has because of its African-American influence. And the whole thing about a divided house cannot stand, and when we all come up together, then of course, like someone once said, we can all be stronger. And hopefully, after people will watch this series, they will see that, they will realize that, and hopefully, of course, help move America towards that more perfect union, that was envisioned, in the Constitution. I mean, how can you say, okay, I'm an American, and you don't believe in freedom, justice, and democracy for all? One nation under God, indivisible. If you don't believe in that, don't call yourself an American, because you're not.
I yeah.
You get that.
I thank you for that. Which leads me to Ty, this is that we alluded to this at the beginning, that the only hope that we had for your piece was to maybe move the needle a little bit, but that in 26 minutes, we're not gonna solve or answer the question of how do you end racism. But what were you thinking as you're going through, you and Justin are working on this film? Was there an underlying spark? Was there an underlying idea that you were either always thinking of, or in your head, you come back to that at the end of the day, you go, yeah, this is still why we're doing this?
No, so for me, like my vision was just to get all of their answers and to see what is everyone saying, what does everyone think can be done. And so obviously when we're filming, we shot like different times of the year, like we shot throughout 2021 and 2022. So like, it was like far and few between sometimes for the interviews. And so like, it wasn't until we were working on the film that I got to go back and really, examine their answers when I was working on the script, and like look at them again and watch the clips and see like how impactful the words were, and like to figure out like, okay, yeah, that's like the best part of their answer right there. Like that's the heart of what they're saying. And so like, it was just kind of like, I was so in the moment when we were making the movie, but like, it really got to marinate on me afterwards. And then like, I mean, because like, with Jalen and Jaleisha, they have some very similar answers, and some other folks had some similar answers, but I think everyone's answers were so different. And like, I think I like Ross Smith's the most more. He was just saying like, what I do with my legislative work, and what I do is I try to like racism ain't going away because so many people just can't acknowledge that it even exists. So how's it going to go away? What I try to do is use my power to help lessen its burden on me and my family and people who look like me. And I thought that was incredible. He's like, hey, this problem, like people don't want it to go away. It's here. It's the reason it's still around is because folks want it to still be around. So I'm doing my best to make it less of a burden. And so like that was just kind of like, yeah, that really resonated with me.
As I was watching those segments with Roz, there was that exactly what you were talking about. But there's one photograph that stands out. And I can't remember if it's in the clips or not. I don't remember. It is. Okay. I did put it in. Okay. Where he's sitting down and he's just got this exhausted look. And in 2 weeks, he creates this change to Iowa government. Tell people a little bit about that whole thing.
It's probably one of the most powerful moments in the film. So as you know, 2020, George Floyd got everyone talking about race and racism. And, the Iowa legislature went into a special session. Ross Smith knew because, Ross is a Democrat, and a lot of times people that are pushing social issues tend to be Democrats. That's just how it is. And so he knew that if he wanted to get any sort of legislation in place following George Floyd, it would have to be during that special session when, folks on both sides of the aisle agree that, hey, we got to do something. We got to make a change. And so during 2020, during that special session, he managed to get a bill accomplished that, went after a lot of things that, led to the murder of George Floyd. When it comes to law enforcement, he crafted this bill to do that. And it was a tall task. So he had to get, Democrats on board, Republicans on board. He got Black Lives Matter on board, and he got law enforcement on board. He got all of that done in 2 weeks. 2 weeks during a special session as a member of the minority party with a Republican trifecta in the state house. Managed to get it done. And so that photo was him after the vote to approve it. It was a perfect vote in both chambers. And that photo was done afterwards. And you could just see him. He's just like, it took everything he had to get that moment done. And that photo was captured by my boss here at Iowa Starting Line. I wasn't working at Starting Line at the time, obviously, but Pat Reiner captured that. And so like, I remember when he first put it on Twitter, I was just like, holy crap. It was just like one of the most powerful images I saw. And I had conversations with Ross about it because he, at first he was like, I don't know if I like it. And I explained to him because it was a private moment. He went there to get away from everybody. You kind of take that moment for himself. And like, when I explained to him, like, no, man, that's a moment. Like, he just captured you. Like, that was a very candid moment, a very real moment. It showed everything you went through and, to get that thing done, to get that piece of legislation passed. Like, it shows in that photo. Like, you can tell that something major just happened and that you had a big role in it. And so like he saw it differently after that. And I was pleasantly surprised when I went to his office to interview him in Waterloo, his home office. The photo was hanging up. And I thought that was really cool.
Well, this is something that about all 4 films, as the exec of this whole series, I see across each one of these films powerful moments. So you didn't see in that 20-minute clip that you just saw, 22-minute clip, you did not see all of the powerful moments that are in there. So I encourage everybody who's watching, spread the word, go out, take a look at these films, watch them from end to end. You don't have to consume them all at once. It's not like you can binge watch them if you want. They do all lead one into the other. But if you only see one, you're going to get a good idea from what the title is and focus on that. You don't need all of them to understand the issue. One thing I do want to do is that if you have more questions, those of you who are watching us on OVEE, go ahead and drop them into the chat and those will get filtered through to me. And then I want to somebody that's important in the genesis of this entire project is Laurel Bauer. She's a producer here at Iowa PBS. And Laurel did, you'll see in the credits, series concept producer, so researcher. She's the one that went out. She contacted several people in the Black community. I think it was 11, of which, Ty, you were one of them. And we asked specific questions. And that's how this was distilled down into these 4 films. So Laurel is integral in making this film possible and the direction, these films, and the direction that they took initially. You all, I said, here, go, and you ran with it. And that's where we've got these 23, 24-minute films that you all can watch. but it's important that, there's like nobody does this alone. So, I just wanted to make sure that I said something about her. Again, if you have questions, send them this way. I did get one here, Terrence. This is for you. And what would you want to see next in terms of helping underrepresented communities build and learn financial literacy?
Yeah, well, I think we need more support from institutions that want the Black dollar, right? So we don't have enough of the institutions that want our business helping to support us to grow our wealth. They may want us to get the loans and so forth, but they want us to kind of keep on that. But support entrepreneurship, support financial literacy education. We get our own literacy and our own knowledge at a young age, then we can start the track early for financial independence, right? We can continue to build. And I think we also need more spaces to build up the Black and Brown ecosystems. So, as it pertains to, having access to commercial real estate, to land, to these different things that help us to grow, to build, and help each other, and also help people patronize businesses, have access to commercial real estate, to buy property, and those kind of things. And I think the other thing people need to realize is that, Black and Brown folks are traditionally undercapitalized, right? We saw the story of Wells Fargo systemically, doing what they do to Black people. And we saw recently a little bit of an exodus of Black people who are account holders at institutions like Wells Fargo. So we are behind, right? Systematically, we are behind. We don't need any more statistics to kind of prove that. Now we need action, right? I was involved with an event, the Black and Brown Business Summit, the second year of it this year, an absolutely amazing event to help not only bring together minority entrepreneurs, but also corporations to help uplift them. I think is great. We need more things like that to help spur economic activity without barriers to entry. I think that's not in a nutshell. I think some of that, as well as a few other things, would really help. Financial literacy, access to capital, more accountability from corporations giving into the Black and Brown business community, and also lower barriers to entry to get access to better things like housing and so forth that help us to scale in that wealth and poverty gap.
When you were interviewing people like Akeo and Deshana, what kind of sense did you get back from them that the mountain was either higher, or they all of a sudden went, wait, if I just do this, then the mountain isn't as high?
Yeah, so first shout out to, again, Freddie Bong and Mark Smith, who helped us to film those interviews. And also a special shout out to Dr. Shelton. I love you. Without her, you would not see Terrence right here because she helped give me the agency as well as my community to be in this space right now. So she's in the chat. So thank you, Dr. Shelton, making comments as Vanessa in there. But, I think I think one of the main things to help spur is access to capital, access to knowledge. Those are the main things. And I think the stories that people that they talk about, whether it's Akeo or Deshara, when they lean in to talk about how they just did not know what they didn't know until time went on, about how even Mayor Hart talks about how conversations that he has now with his friends are different from the conversations he had growing up. I think Andre
said the same thing. Yeah,
he did. Yeah, for sure. But I think the rhetoric had to change, right? And the mindset had to change to go after things that they did not see, right? To climb and reach after things that they maybe at one point was not a part of their normal everyday activity. And I think another consistency is I think everyone came from a background where their parents did the best they could and did a great job with what they had. And then they went ahead and passed on the rest. And the kids are supposed to take it further, right? And but again, there's still a responsibility to put that into action. So there was a common denominator there of all those individuals wanting more for themselves and reaching up higher for more information and then putting it into action.
We've had quite the discussion, the four of us. And I want to open this up just a little bit. And, like, what haven't we talked about? Because we've covered a lot of ground here. Ty, is there something that I haven't asked you that you think people ought to know? Or have we managed to cover the ground we need to in the past 45 minutes?
That's a great question. I mean,
you can come back. You can pass or play.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think we covered a lot of ground. I mean, I don't want to give away too much from the film because, it's only 26 minutes, so I can't give away all the great stuff ahead of time. But I really encourage y'all to see all 4 of these films. I've only seen mine so far, but I can't wait to see everybody's. I mean, I know how hard it is to make these, and I know how great they're going to be and how impactful they're going to be. I mean, Terrence, he does this for a living. Like, this is what he does. I mean, you see this brother all over town on different boards and committees. I mean, I was at Gravitate downtown a few months ago, and I was like, oh, I know him. I saw his face. And so, you got the illustrious Dr. Berry. So, anytime Dr. Berry's name is attached to something that I'm attached to, I feel like, oh, I'm important. I mean, y'all heard her resume earlier today. It's nuts. And then I found out she had a brother who's also just as talented and has a crazy resume. I mean, they both have their own Wikipedia pages. So, we got some pros working on these films. All right. So this is going to be great. I mean, seriously, tune in and get ready to learn, feel something. You're going to laugh a little bit during mine. You might cry a little bit, might get angry. You're gonna experience all the emotions, but hopefully the one you walk away with is empathy.
Steve, tell me a little bit. What have we not talked about? We sure hit a lot.
Yeah, I think we've covered quite a bit. The only thing that I really like to, again, hope that we're able to do with this again is to actually to affect and change people's minds and attitudes, because it's the thing that, in my opinion, growing up in Iowa, I used to feel so blessed that I was growing up in Iowa. I mean, we didn't have a gang problem in Des Moines at the time in the 60s, we didn't have major drug problems, I mean, there was just such a fun and, wonderful environment, but racism undercut it all. My experiences early in life with racism just put a damper on everything, and certain experiences that I had coming up actually damaged me. And I would say I'm still damaged, to this day. In fact, one of my major, I guess, hopes or plans that I've always had was to do something, find something that would totally, eradicate racism, through understanding. I've actually initially when I was in film school in UCLA, there was a film I'm sure a lot of people know about called Birth of a Nation, back in 1915, that supposedly, and I agree, has done so much to undermine relations, racial relations, around the world, and it had a major impact. So my thought back then was, well, if a film has had so much of an opportunity and impact to negatively affect racial issues, then, there should be a film that could be made to totally undo all of that. And so I wrote this script called Tears. And Tears is an acronym for Teach Everybody All Racism Sucks. And so I wrote it as a screenplay while I was at UCLA, of course, and then realizing, how much money it would take, to produce it and everything at one point. And of course, with my illustrious sister being an author, and a great role model, I decided, well, why don't I try to, write a book? And then of course, what would it be? So I decided to novelize, my screenplay. So I novelized Tears. So now it's actually, a self-published novel as well. And hopefully the whole point is to have people realize, that the damaging and the self-defeating impact that racism has. Some people want to think that it's like this is a zero-sum gain. In order for one person to benefit, it has to take away from somebody else. If you get yours, then I'm going to lose mine. And I don't believe that is the case. And so I believe that, this whole series, put together in a package, I'm hoping, praying that, of course, it will affect people's minds, because it's all about, you just have to plant the seed, and then once that seed is planted, then ideas and ideologies and people's, attitudes can change. And we need to change some attitudes, because, like when Obama was elected, people was running around, oh, we're in a post-racial America, there's no more. And then what happened, 8 years later? They jerked it back, 50 years. So now, of course, we've got a lot of work to do. We've got a lot of work to do to mend and, get back, to square one.
Venice, what have we not talked about? There is so much. And, I go back to that list you sent me where I think you had 8 or 9 items and you might have gotten 5 in. And those are the category headings. Within that, you've got a lot of stuff put in there. What did we not talk about? What did we not hit on tonight?
Well, let me first of all kind of follow Terrence and say, I really appreciate him because my understanding is that he recommended me to do this piece. And I think that I feel like I was a really good person to do this historic piece because I've done a lot of research and tried to really look at Iowa and the African-American culture in Iowa. As a matter of fact, at one point in our film, we had there's Black people in Iowa, and David had to take it out because we did another film. Anybody who lives in Iowa has gotten that question. If
I had $1 for every time I heard it, I'd be a wealthy man. I could have made my film tears.
That was one executive producer moment where I was like, okay, Ty's already made it to the finish line first here, so now we're gonna go to. You guys, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to take that out. So, but you did fill that with it. When I got the film back from the first draft, and I said, okay, let's work on these parts. This is fine. How about doing this? There was stuff in there where I was like, whoa, wait, I don't even remember this being in the first version of the film. So it was a wonderful surprise, but it was just holy smokes, this is new.
Yeah, we had to change it up. But I just want people to understand that, their African-American culture in Iowa has been substantial. It has been significant. It is, people are important, and we do shape this state in a variety of different ways based on, our experience, based on our knowledge, based on our, just the various activities and situations that we create. And so I just want people to know that, yes, there are Blacks in Iowa and we're doing great and we have some good stuff going on, and so that's basically my main thing there is, and it's been going on for 86 years before Brown versus the Board of Education.
Yeah. The whole Clark case. Yes. Okay, Terrence, you got the final words here. Is there something that we missed, something in that you discovered in your research, or that when Mark and Fred brought you films and said, here, what were there things that you discovered that you went, okay, and I know I've asked you this, but this is my second chance here for you to go, yeah, there was this other thing that I noticed that really struck me that I was unaware of.
I think that, again, I'll go back to the first film. Me being an entrepreneur, there were some things that there were some similar things I had heard, even though I did. I was happy that, everyone in that film elevated things. The original state of that film was going to focus just on the Black male experience. And I'm very glad that you and some of the others at PBS said, this is so powerful. We need to make sure we include our Black women, because I don't need no calls from the aunties and all the cousins talking about where we at, because it just wasn't a part of the scope as we were trying to be very specific and telling different kinds of stories. I'm so glad that we went and made sure that to be inclusive. But I would say on the film one, as we explored how racism exists in our state, how racism exists in our communities. That was the focus of the film, right? The different ways that it exists. And as you peel back that onion, the intricacies of it that are right in front of our face that we don't realize, Joy, Briscoe, and Dr. D break that thing down so fine. And it is, you just, once you see it, you can't not see it. And so it's one of those things where maybe you hear similar themes. We may think we know what redlining is. We may think we know about how, the story of, Jack Tri-Stadium, these other things, but it's bigger than that. It's about what's happening right now with our fellow man. You know what I'm saying? It's what's happening right now with people that we say we care about, our neighbors, but then we see them as the other. And we maybe don't recognize, and I think I alluded to this in the questionnaire with Dr. Shelton. She was asking if you could expand, what would you have included? And I kind of talk about it where we would maybe dive deeper into how legislation and certain laws perpetuate racism. And this is not exclusive just to Iowa, right? It happens all over our country. But that thing is powerful when you look at it. And if you can step back and say, what is happening in my community here in Iowa City, or here in Dubuque, or here in Des Moines, you can take a look at that thing and say, and maybe hopefully it pushes you to action. But I hope I answered your question, correctly. Yeah. I just think when you dive into it and once you see something, you can't unsee it, and it should spur us to action. Because it's not about us, it's about our kids, it's about our neighbors, it's about creating a better community for what we want to see, minus all the political climate stuff, right? We could be objective, look at truth, and then at that point, we should want to take action to make our communities better.
Thank you. I want to thank all of you, Ty and Venise and Steve and Terrence. Thank you for sharing all of your thoughts tonight. Thank you for sharing your experience and your work that Iowans will be able to see. And I want to thank everybody who's out there on OVEE tonight. I want to thank you for joining us and listening in on our discussion. And I understand you've been having a great discussion online while we've been talking. So I'm really excited to hear about all that. I also want to say thank you on behalf of Iowa PBS for you joining us here for this special advanced preview. And don't forget to watch the film. So you can watch Film 1, Telling Our Own Story, Racism and Its Impact at 8 p.m. Monday, June 6th. And right following at 8:30, you're going to see Telling Our Own Story, Poverty and the Wealth Gap. And following that will be a short bit about Terrence that Laurel Bauer put together. These are filmmaker profiles. Then on Tuesday night at 8 o'clock, you'll see Telling Our Own Story, Black History. And that will be followed by a short piece that Laurel put together about Venise and Steve. And then that will wrap up at 8:30 with Ty's film. And then at the end of that, there'll be a short bit about Ty, maybe some things that we didn't quite touch on here, a little bit more history about their background, those sorts of things. Again, thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it. Remember, you can also watch these at 12:01 a.m. on June 6th on iowapbs.org, or you can watch on the PBS video app. Thank you very much and have a great rest of your evening.
And thank you so much for all your good guidance and you overseeing, looking at all this stuff, because you made it happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate you, man. A lot of evenings.
True. Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Night. See you, sis.
Bye.